Sex Addiction and the Brain by Sophia Gami. So, addiction is defined as the act or condition of being addicted to a particular substance, thing, or activity. Addictions will put people in places they never knew they would be in. An addiction will cause a person to go after their addiction even if it could harm themselves or others. The persistence of seeking out the activity you are addicted to is so strong because of how it is tied into the memory of your brain. The memories of feeling nice and having fun overwhelm the mind that most of the bad parts are just pushed away. This also continues because of a tolerance that the person builds. This tolerance that they build will go and make them want more and more pleasure. So if they want more and more pleasure, they're going to keep seeking out the thing that they are addicted to. Sex addiction is described as having compulsive thoughts and acts about sex. A sex addiction can lead to compulsive masturbation, overuse of pornography, and in more serious and obscene cases, molestation and rape. As stated before, an addiction can take over someone's life and cause them to do things they never even imagined. A study found that 55% of sex offenders were mostly sex addicts, and 71% of child molesters were considered to be sex addicts. I'm sure these people never really considered that they could end up committing crimes because of an addiction like this, especially something like sex, where you wouldn't consider, an addiction just really going wrong in the terms that someone else is so severely harmed. So, how does this addiction develop? Just like other addictions, a sex addiction can be caused by a production of dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that controls the brain's reward and pleasure center. Dopamine is a natural chemical in the body that essentially makes us happy. A drug like cocaine creates a boost in dopamine in the brain, but this boost leads to a blockage of the uptake of new dopamine that is later on produced. This can lead to periods of depression. While sex doesn't really block the reuptake of dopamine like a drug like cocaine, it can go and create an addiction in a person because a person can want to seek out that euphoric feeling that they had before with that surge of dopamine. So they're going to go and keep seeking out this dopamine to feed their addiction in the same pathway via sex. So a study was conducted on rats having sex and was studied by a psychologist, Jill Becker, who saw an increase of dopamine in male rats. When a female rat scent was smelled, they saw a female rat, and during sexual contact. As the body develops an addiction, it also develops a tolerance to that vice. This tolerance makes the satisfaction decrease and the effects last only a short amount of time. This causes an addiction that needs to be met so often and can cause withdrawals if not met. So I chose these two pictures because I thought they were very important in their own way. In the bottom right picture, I liked it because there's an arrow pointing up for tolerance. As a person is looking more and more at porn or thinking more and more about porn and sex, they're going to go and want to achieve that orgasm to reach that dopamine. And it's eventually going to create this cycle where they want that satisfaction in the end. So they're going to go and keep going back to the porn, keep going back to it. But once, a tolerance is built, something that might have been super exciting when they first saw it or, did it, that's not going to be as exciting anymore because that tolerance is built and it's just not going to work out. The dopamine satisfaction isn't going to be there. And I liked the top left picture because it shows what goes more into it, more into the drug, the porn, the sex. It can be addictive. You can lose control and be compulsive and do things you never even imagined, never even wanted to do in the first place, but you kind of let this want for satisfaction to take control you know and just create that tolerance. If you don't have that met, withdrawal, you could feel depressed because you're not getting the dopamine that you're putting in there. In 2014, a study was conducted on 64 men, and these men were just picked at random. They weren't told that they were going to be looking at anything explicit. They were just told they were going to have some MRIs done, and look at their brain pretty much. They didn't really know what they were going to be in. So these men weren't sex addicts. They weren't, condemned to that. They weren't not at all. So they were just 64 random regular men. So these men were asked some initial questions, and the questions were about how much porn they watched a week, if it increased more on the weekends, etc. Later on, the men went through a couple experiments. One was a Q reactivity test. This test contained, 60 photos that were explicit, they were pornography, and 60 that weren't. They wanted to look at that, see how they responded. They did that just very fast, so the men wouldn't really know what they were looking at, but to see what kind of got them excited, if they noticed it. And the other test was the MRI. Now, the MRI results concluded a negative association between hours of pornography viewed and the gray matter volume of a participant. So, of the participants, the results found that 32% of the participants were at risk for a sex addiction. They weren't there yet, but they were at risk, and the most recorded amount of time that someone, said they watched porn in a week was about 4.8 hours, less than 5 hours, so everyone was under that, but 4.8 hours was the most maximum. So this was a picture of the results that were found in the experiment about the pornography consumption of the hours in the week and the probability of gray matter volume in the participants. So gray matter is an essential part of the brain as it processes information in the brain. So we can see that, going down the line, it seems that people who consume more porn and watch it more are a little bit more, they don't have as much gray matter. At least this is what they found in this study. In conclusion, sex addiction can start for various reasons and cause some people to walk down an unwanted path, just like any other addiction. And an addiction for sex can cause an increase of dopamine, which will eventually lead to the body wanting more and more dopamine, which can progress addiction farther and farther. I found this topic really interesting because when I was researching it, there are a few articles that came up and they were like sex addiction as a myth and, things like that. A lot of people think that, since sex is a natural part of life,